So, this brings us to the five tribes. That is the Cherokee, the Creek, also called the Muskogee, the Seminole, the Choctaw, and the Chickasaw. The five tribes held this general area, kind of referred to as the American South, so like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. They held that whole territory. And it is gorgeous. It is a fantastic area for farming, and unfortunately, that's why that land was taken from them. It's sometimes called the civilized tribes because they did try to adopt a lot of European civilization, a lot of European culture. They dressed like them, they talked like them, they married into their families, hoping they could kind of find some balance with European powers that were coming over. Unfortunately, that did not work and they were removed from their homes. So let's talk a little bit about what they ate. For the most part, it was fairly bland because there was not a lot of spices in North America. There was some, but they were not near India, they were not near China, they were not near Persia, they were not near anywhere that they're really going to get anything other than what they have, which is mainly, well, trout. Be cooked a little bit more and look like that. They'd also have a bit of fry bread, which is, like the name suggests, fried bread. And those three sisters would get turned into a nice stew. Pumpkins, beans, and corn, as well as pemmican, which is very similar to jerky. However, it's preserved a little differently with more fat instead of being smoked. So, you can still find Iroquois people in Iroquois or Great Lakes lands. You can still find Plains tribes in the plains. You can still find Osage just in Missouri. But you are not going to find nearly as many of these people of the five tribes in their homelands. And that's because they were moved onto reservations in East Oklahoma. These people were forced out of their homelands and onto these reservations that are barely 10% of the land that they used to hold. So, why did this happen? Ultimately, this happened because of the Indian Removal Act of 1830. That was an American act that has happened about 30 years before the Civil War started. And ultimately, this leads us to the Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears is a broad term for all of these different individual paths that these people took from their homelands to the reservations on the Oklahoma territory. Ultimately, this was because of American expansion. This land that these five tribes were on was incredibly fertile, full of rivers. You could easily grow crops and put them on a boat and sail them anywhere in the world. It was an absolute moneymaker for America. So, these people were forced from their homes and moved to a reservation. There was a lot of opposition to this act. Actually, if just two votes had changed their mind, this might not have happened, and we'd be living in probably a very different America. There were dozens of individual people, missionaries, a lot of people who thought that this wasn't the best way to handle it. And President Andrew Jackson was actually almost impeached over this and a couple other unsavory acts of his. He is a very complicated president. I think you'll find a lot of people would agree with that. This is just one account of what the Trail of Tears was like. This is an individual soldier from the Civil War. I fought through the Civil War and I've seen men shot to pieces and slaughtered by thousands, but the Cherokee removal was the cruelest work I ever knew. So a man who watched his friends die in front of him still thought this was horrific. The Seminole also thought it was horrific what was happening to their brothers, and they fought back with guns. The Seminole saw what was happening to their brothers, and they fought back hard. Andrew Jackson actually was a general at this time, and they had to send the U.S. Army to actively fight the Seminole to try to weaken them as much as possible before they eventually did remove them from their homelands entirely. So, the Trail of Tears. About 15,000 people from these five tribes died on this walk alone. That's one out of every three people that were removed from their homes. They died before they even made it to their reservations. And again, this is just to give you a comparison of the lands they originally held to the places that they were moved to. And this is what they were giving up. This is Mississippi. This is Georgia. This is Alabama. It's these lush, beautiful farmlands, these fantastic places to live as a person. And they're incredibly fertile and perfect for farming. They were there to make a lot of money, and they were forced onto this. This is East Oklahoma. This is it. That same quality of life is just not going to exist. Those same cultural ways, those same ways of being every single day are just not going to exist when you move so far to such a wildly different environment. So, the Iroquois, just to review these three groups that we've been talking about, they were in the Great Lakes region. They had very large cities and fought a lot with Europeans. You'll learn about that in Mr. Bryan's class with the French and Indian War. There is a lot of conflict, and it's going to be the Iroquois. The Plains, which is right about here, they were nomadic. They traveled regularly for their entire lives because they were following migrating buffalo. They did not own the land. They didn't believe in owning the land. It was something that everybody was using. It didn't make sense to own, so they used it. And the five tribes. They adopted European culture. They really tried to merge themselves with it and integrate with it, but it just didn't happen. They were pushed out of their home for farming. So, these are the North American tribes. I am excited to get started on South America. We're going to be doing Incans and Mayans and Aztecs, and they have even bigger cities, even cooler cultures, and we have a lot more information about them because they wrote a lot more of it down. Love that language. So, we will talk about them tomorrow, whether I'm there at school and you're there at school or we're not. It will be fun, I promise. Please enjoy your snow days as much as you can. See ya.